We all know about the NSA spying scandal that is resonating throughout the intelligent world, and I emphasize the word intelligent. I do not mean the world of non-intelligence. I'm talking about anyone with an IQ. It doesn't matter what your education level may or may not be. It matters whether you know what's actually going on. This is unprecedented in Western societies where a government spies on every citizen, whether they are guilty or innocent. We have with us William Edward Binney. He worked with the NSA. He resigned in '01. He was a whistleblower for many years now, and he was such a good whistleblower that he was the subject of an FBI investigation, many of them, and the FBI raided his home in 2007, but he still speaks out against Barack Obama's NSA data collection policies. He now joins us because he believes we are now moving towards a police state. William Binney, welcome to the Savage Nation.
Oh, good day. How are you doing?
William, you said last year we are like that far from a turnkey totalitarian state. Isn't that correct?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Are we actually there yet?
Well, if not, we're certainly very close. I mean, the entire mechanism to make that happen is in place now. Some of it's being used currently by the FBI and the DEA as a means, or using the NSA collection as a means of arresting people.
Arresting people for actual crimes or political crimes or both?
Well, I'm sure it's probably both, but I think the arrests they're making are primarily for crimes.
Okay, so they're using NSA data and methods, rather, which were allegedly put in place to stop terrorism, which is now being used to stop counterfeiters, bank robbers. Everyone say, well, that's good, but that's not really good, is what you're saying.
I mean, the domestic internal collection that NSA is doing has nothing to do with terrorism, but it has a lot to do with crime, and that's what the FBI and the DEA, that's what they're using it for. They're the primary users of that data.
Mr. Binney, you worked at the NSA. People should know that.
Yes.
May I ask what you did there? What did you do? You worked there for 32 years?
As a civilian, yes, and the 3 years as a military, yeah.
You were instrumental in the creation of the NSA surveillance program for digital information, so you were early on very knowledgeable about these instruments, correct?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it was my design, yeah.
So you feel a little guilty for this. It's sort of a Frankenstein. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Now, look, you resigned from the NSA in '01 under the Bush administration. Is that true?
Yes. Right.
But why did you resign so early on in '01? Were they randomly spying on Americans then under Bush?
Well, that's when it all started. That started in October of 2001, right after 9/11. They ordered all the equipment and everything in, and were put it together, and then started the program to do the from the telecoms. They were bringing in all their billing data on every phone call in the United States, and that was where I saw the line. They crossed the line there. That was a violation of the constitutional rights of everybody. Because not only do it's not just a number like Feinstein says. I mean, she doesn't know what she's talking about. That they have a reverse lookup. I mean, the 3 weeks ago, 60 Minutes did an expose on NSA. It was a positive one, and they showed some slides there of things they were doing, like the contact chaining, which is what they're looking at two hops away from a terrorist in Somalia,
Right.
And then they showed that, and then they showed another screen where it listed U.S. numbers with state the numbers were in, and also the city they were in, and the dates and times of contacts. Well, that told me right there that they had a reverse lookup of the entire phone book of the United States, including names and addresses, because you can't get the city for a number. I mean, if you go into the phone book, look at the front pages, you'll see the list of all of the area codes. Sure, that you can get the state from the area code, but you can't get the city unless you look at the exact number, every individual number in the book.
But when you're not arguing, I want to understand you. First of all, I'm leery of an organization that exists primarily to stop so-called terrorism that failed us on at least 4 major terrorist events, including the Boston Marathon bombing, even though they had the sawn-off boys in their site. Can you speak about why they let that one slipped through or how that happened since they're so expert at catching all this data?
Well, I mean, the reason they did that is simply because they have too much data to look at. They can't look through it all.
I mean, but because they were Muslims from Dagestan, they were sort of not to be looked at, but a nun from Milwaukee is on the watch list?
Right. I know what you're saying, but that's just you see, that's the point of it. When you take in too much data, you become so incompetent or inept in finding the targets that are really important. That's why. And,
of course, Eric Holder last week said he's going to eliminate religion as an organizing principle in any national security investigations. Now, how can you do that while almost every terrorist event of the past 15 to 20 years have been perpetrated by those of the Muslim faith? How can you eliminate that as an organizing principle?
Well, you can't, obviously. I mean, it obviously has to be a factor.
Well, look, I don't want to drag you into my political, point of view, because I'm not even asking you where you stand politically. But what I really want to ask is something that every listener to this program is probably asking themselves, Mr. Binney. Remember who they're listening to. They're listening to a man who worked for over 32 years with the NSA, a man who actually created the NSA surveillance program for digital information. You're also the NSA senior technical director. So this is coming so-called from the horse's mouth. Mr. Binney, are they spying on high-profile media people such as Michael Savage, Rush Limbaugh, and others?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Now, when you say spying, does that mean they have a dedicated agent whose job it is to listen to me 8 hours a day, 3 of them a day, 24 hours a day?
I don't know if they have a dedicated agent, but they certainly have either they are reviewing everything that you in terms of who you're calling or who you're emailing, or they are at least reviewing it at the end of the day or weekly at least.
Well, I'm insulted because I've said before that unless they assign 3 agents full-time to me, I'm considering, I really find that to be a grave insult. I'm worth at least 3 full-time agents. I mean, after all, if I call my dog groomer, I wouldn't want them to miss that. Or if I call one of my family members and ask them how they're feeling because they injured their leg, they certainly have a right to know that. I mean, that's a very important event, isn't it?
It's exactly. I know what you're saying. That's right.
Well, no, this, of course, is unconstitutional. It's illegal. Can a citizen sue to find out if they're being spied upon?
Well, you see, that's part of what they were doing is they claim what they did was give the telecommunications company retroactive immunity. And they would claim national security or you don't have standing, so unless you could show that they actually had records on you, which are all kept secret, by the way, so you don't have a chance to see them, unless you can show that, well, you don't have standing. And that's what they're arguing in the courts. That's the way they keep you out of the courts.
I see. We have no standing as Americans to find out if we're being spied upon by illicit, illegal activity, meaning illicit and through illicit and illegal activity by government officials. This is very serious stuff. You know better than I what's really going on here. This is very much along the lines of what went on in Eastern Europe under the Stasi, only it's on steroids, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
The Soviet Union didn't have this level of spying capacity, did it?
I mean, the KGB wanted to do exactly the same thing. They just didn't have the capacity. So
this is what's eerie to me. This is what frightens me, Mr. Binney. You spoke out after working for 32 years, and this was under the Bush administration. The FBI raided your home for what?
To stop me from talking to anybody. They didn't want me to go to the Senate Judiciary Committee and tell them, for example, all the programs that Attorney General Gonzalez didn't mention to them when he was testifying to the terrorist surveillance programs of the president.
So what happened? They certainly didn't. They didn't stop you, did they?
Well, I mean, see what happens when you get raided by the FBI and they confiscate your material and they give you warrants and stuff like that. You then lawyer up, and when you lawyer up, your lawyers tell you don't talk to anybody, don't do anything. So there's that period of time where you're kind of in isolate. You kind of isolate yourself, stay away.
Of course, you're frightened. Of course, you're frightened. You don't know what they're going to do next. But you're speaking out now. This is not the first show you've been on. You've been on big shows. What would you like to see happen? How do we stop them? I
personally would like to see a special prosecutor go in and investigate them all. everybody in the administration of the Congress and the courts, and then hold them all accountable for what they did in court.
Wouldn't that be nice to live in America again? Wouldn't that be wonderful to wake up and see America? Wouldn't it be great to have the equivalent of a Watergate prosecutor and special counsel looking into the NSA spying scandal? I wonder if that could happen in our country today, given the fact that we have lost the press and have no opposition party to press this issue with the proper authorities. Who are the proper authorities? Eric Holder?
Right, and the point is that they're all a part of it. They're all culpable in it, so they're not going to do anything.
Do you fear for your, Mr. Binney? Do you fear for your safety? I don't know if that's a legitimate question that you even want to answer. Don't answer it if you don't feel that it's legitimate.
Well, I don't, but I'm not going to stop no matter what they do, because I'm going to keep speaking out, because if they do something to me, then you all know what they are, okay? And
we know what they are already, Mr. Binney. We know what they are, but you said something at the outset of this interview that is absolutely eerie. What you said was, no, we're not a police state yet, but all of the elements are in place for that. Could you please elaborate on that point?
Well, right now, the police are only going after supposed criminals, I guess, the evidence they have in criminals, but they've got all the rest of the evidence on anybody else. But, the IRS is tied into the DEA and the NSA database through the Special Operations Division, so they have access to all this networking and relationships. So they can target people like the Tea Party, the Occupy group, or any religious group in the country. Just by looking at the social networks, you can do that.
What do you mean, target them? What if they're not committing a crime?
It doesn't matter. See, that's the just don't understand.
Wait, I understand what you're saying. It doesn't matter. They can target them for surveillance, but what can they actually arrest them for if they're not committing a crime?
Well, they're not arresting them right now, but what they're using is the IRS to delay them getting tax-exempt status and things like that.
Yes, of course. But you're saying if this keeps up, if this is not stopped, eventually it will become something more sinister than what it is today.
Unfortunately, people do that. I mean, if you give people power, sooner or later they use it.
Yes, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, as Lord Acton taught all of us who remember anything about history. Can this monster be stopped? Can Frankenstein be reverse engineered?
Yes, it can, and the only way it can is if people start speaking up against this and just tell their representatives and senators, if you don't help stop this stuff, you're fired, and then follow through and fire them. I don't care who's on the ballot; doesn't matter whether Democrat or Republican. Vote for somebody who's never been there. I mean, we could not do any worse if we randomly picked from the phone book to select our representative.
I agree. That's very true. It's absolutely true. We couldn't do any worse. Mr. Binney, you're actually an American hero along the lines of the Founding Fathers. You've risked everything to tell the truth. Can you stay with us for a moment and take a call or two on the Savage Nation?
Yeah, sure, I can.
Okay, folks, you got one opportunity to speak with one of the true heroes of America, a real great American, as opposed to a radio talk show host. We'll be right back.
Let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Today we are celebrating Dr. King's legacy on the program, and we're asking a simple question. Would Martin Luther King Jr. have approved of what Obama has done to us in so many areas, with a hard focus on the gigantic spying scandal? And to answer that question is a man who really knows. William Edward Binney worked at the NSA for 32 years. He actually created the NSA surveillance program for digital information. He was the NSA's senior technical director, and this has been one of the most intriguing interviews I've ever done in all my 20 years in radio. Mr. Binney, welcome back to the Savage Nation. One quick question for you before the hour ticks away. During the Bush years, when you resigned in 2001, the left wing was complaining about this spying, and I dismissed their complaints as typical left wing, belly aching that there really wasn't such a big deal. And I used to say I have nothing to hide. Was Bush doing exactly what Obama's doing?
Not to the degree that is currently going on, no. He's basically started to get things rolling along the same lines, the same idea. but he did not have the capacity built up that's currently ongoing.
So, in other words, we were told by Bush when he was called on the carpet for this that they were only spying on foreign calls coming into the U.S., and they had created a firewall to not spy on Americans within the U.S. Was that true?
No. In fact, David Murphy Falk and Adrian Kinney were two transcribers in Fort Gordon, Georgia, who were transcribing U.S. people calling one another back and forth from overseas, specifically in the Green Zone. That was a main target. But they were copying U.S. people, military people calling home to their wives and family, and also non-government organizations.
So in other words, when you give an organization of bureaucrats power, they will abuse it because they've got no controls or constraints on them whatsoever. So we are in a crypto police state, and we're very close to a full-blown police state. We've just spoken with a true American patriot and hero, William Binney. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us on the Savage Nation.